Okay, I wanted to speak about this unalterable animal. This is probably my favorite of the three that we've discussed. Even though it has commonality with the honey of common summer and I other than human, I think that this one has a bit more power to it and is more concise than those two. The, the thing that appeals to me about it too is that it deals with a smaller set of characters. It's less surreal than the aforementioned plays. But I want you. Are you hiccuping?
No.
Oh. But I want to speak about just the characters themselves. Ava, the daughter, uh, Ava, the mother, and then Danny, the patient.
It's Liz the daughter. Liz is the daughter.
Oh, Liz, yes. I don't know. It just must be a Bergman thing. But Liz is the daughter, Ava the mother, and then Danny is the patient. And then it has some really standout sections here where the direction is far more important than the dialogue, as you note early in the play. But discuss that aspect, discuss the three characters. I hadn't known until this play. I mean, maybe it got mentioned in True Life. I hadn't known you actually had any therapy sessions. I think it was briefly mentioned in True Life where you went and talked to someone to deal with your anger issues. But discuss a bit about that.
Well, this wasn't meant to be, but in a sense, it's almost a twin or mirror play to the first play we discussed, one autumnal face, because it's Danny and two female characters, and in that first play, it's two versions of one single character, and here we have Dr. Cotter, who's the psychoanalyst, and then her daughter Liz. And the play opens with Liz with a long monologue, and that gives us the idea that Liz is the central character of the play. But it turns out not to be, because it turns out at the end that Dr. Cotter has died recently, and then we find out at the end of the second movement of the dirge, of three movements, we find out at the end of the second movement that Liz has been dead since she was 8 years old. She never was a middle-aged woman as she appears here.
That's a great twist, because you initially think that she's trying to find out information about Ava.
Yeah.
And it's one of these searches for parental connection, and then you eventually, it unfolds upon itself. It's divided into three sections. I think it's sessions, memories, and actions, if I remember correctly. And then this play really destroys Beckett too, because the characters are always talking around each other, talking about their own aims. They all have different motivations, but the way that it's done is far richer than Beckett. And even when they're talking around each other, there's usually some strong central theme to all of their dialogue.
Well, they're not just talking around each other. If you look at it, the only time in the last third of the third movement, the characters break free of their artifice and talk to the audience and each other. But before that, the only time that there's any interaction between any of the three characters is when we see Danny and Dr. Cotter in the past at the sessions. Other than that, they're always talking to the audience, and they don't hear each other. Danny doesn't hear Liz. Dr. Cotter doesn't hear her daughter, and Liz doesn't recognize it. And it's only until we find out, but it's written so that until we find out at the end of the second section that Liz had died at the age of 8, she was apparently kidnapped and either raped and killed as a child and whatnot. It seems natural because she's always picking up on the other. She's situated that it seems like she's looking at her mother and her mother's talking, and she seems to think she's having a dialogue, but she really isn't having a dialogue. And then we get that moment, like in it's not that good of a film, The Sixth Sense, where she's dead, so that's the reason she can't communicate with them, because she's dead, and Dr. Cotter is dead. And as I said, so the only time we get, for the bulk of the play, any real character interaction is in the psychotherapy sessions that are remembered by Danny and Dr. Cotter.
It seems like art is the avoidance of death in your plays too, because you have all of these dead characters often talking as either as memories or in this one in a more surreal setting. The thing too that I wanted to mention is that you mentioned how they're talking to the audience directly too, but I also wanted to ask about the sessions themselves between Ava and Danny Wagner. Speak a little bit more in detail of that section and some of the details that unfold themselves.
It's been a few weeks since I wrote this. I think Danny talks
one really memorable section, and I wanted you to just answer this, and then I wanted to get something in about the stage direction. Is where he reads "Flexible Flyer," one of your poems, and then he admits that he hasn't written it yet in the middle of these sessions. That's just a very interesting touch.
Well, and also I have here I have the thing where there's this sort of explosion like 2001 of the poems.
That's a good example. That section is a very complex section where you have all these different poems that go around and change color, and it's basically this fugue around a photo of Charlotte Rampling. And how would this be staged? Because I remember the play Janelle's Red Yaya. I thought that would be a difficult play to stage unless you had a really great director and actors. But this one seems even more difficult than that play to stage. This is probably one of the more unstageable plays that you've got here.
Well, I don't know if it's unstageable. I mean, starting with Exteriors, my fourth play, I had some things. And I was thinking of, and I got to write it down because I just remembered. I'm thinking of doing a play using a Greek chorus. And I also got an idea that I'm going to do a rock opera at some point. Anyway, I would. This is one of those things I don't know technologically, but I've seen, where you have the like laser lights that come out from the thing. Someone would have to be, you'd have to have some of the words, and you wouldn't even necessarily have to have the whole poems, but you could have just little moments, because a lot of times, and I don't know if you've ever had this, if you look at movies, you often get a character freeze frame, frozen, and around them you'll see images, or you'll see scenes from their past, whether it was actually shown in the movie, from 20 minutes earlier, where characters are talking. I've often had that, and I've often wondered, did people 200 years ago, before movies, for example, have those kinds of moments, or did they only come about after movies came about and people could see this and think in those kinds of terms? I've had it oftentimes where, I'll turn my head and it reminds me of a Teo Angelopoulos film, the one where the guy is in memories, where he'll turn around and he walks into the memories. Woody Allen.
Eternity in a Day.
Eternity in a Day, yeah. And Woody Allen does this once or twice in some of his movies too. And I used, obviously, from Stardust Memories, the use of Charlotte Rampling, the use of Liv Ullmann, and then the use of Hal the computer there. And to have this coming out is that, okay, I forget what precipitates it, but I think the other two characters are mid-talking, and Danny sort of maybe steps away for a moment, and we get this idea, because there have been times like when I have I'll be doing something at work, at a job, or something, and I'll remember something. You just saw me in these videos. I've just written down a few things that came to me. But sometimes I'll have a memory of, oh, I remember now. I smell something, and I remember a girl. Is this the play where I think I talk about the Puerto Rican girl in the subway? Is that this play?
I don't know. I remember there's another one that you talk about where you have this brief moment of peace and thinking about the last brief moment of peace you had. Then one that
but those are the kinds of moments that come to me. I don't know if it's like that with you, or I don't know if Jessica has those either. But I have those kinds of moments where I have this filmic kind of rush of things, and so I thought, well, let's have this come out, and so now we know perhaps why Danny is initially seeing Dr. Cotter in the past is that because Danny talks about how he went to a priest, even though he's not a Roman Catholic, and he talked with the priest, and then Danny knows that he can't talk about everything with Dr. Cotter because if he talks about crimes that are still within the what is the
statute of limits,
the statute of limitations, that you know, she might be obligated to report it, and so in real life, that's why the only good I got from that was being able to sort of release some pressure within me. The you know, but and so that that happens, and it's just a way to say, oh, here's something happened with Danny, and I think it happens before we find out about the death of Liz as a child. But there's all these kinds of things, and it's one of these things that plays like this, just in these three plays, which I don't know, I wouldn't put any of these three plays, well, with exception, they're not because they're shorter plays and they're not 35, 40,000 words long, they're not as complex in one sense in terms of the character arcs within the plays. On the other hand, in a sense, a lot of these have what some might term gimmicks, you know, the whole use of Groucho Marx and the duck soup moment in the other play, the whole use of this 2001 kind of use of the poems. Oh, Kiwi wants to go out again. Okay, go out.